Have you seen the pirouette pattern of Cozy? Donna, Matt, please do the pirouette. I recently purchased Cozy Quilt Designs pirouette from your shop. Could you squeeze in a video for that one? Why, yes, we can. Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today we're going to make the pirouette pattern. This looks really interesting. I love the shape here. Not exactly sure how to make it, but I'm excited to get started. This is a pattern from Cozy Quilt Designs, and I love their patterns. One of the reasons I like them so much is they have multiple sizes. This one has 7 sizes. So I'm going to make the twin size. It uses jelly roll strips, and we're going to need 35. And that's nice because most jelly rolls have 40 pieces in them. So it's very convenient for this pattern. I've been wanting to use these lovely greens here. This is called Evergreen, and it's from Laundry Basket Quilts, printed by Andover. We're also going to need an accent fabric. So right here, these little diamonds, you could use a different color. You could introduce another color, but I'm going to stick with the same green tones. These are all the fabrics that are in the jelly roll, and I think this will make a very nice accent. The only other thing we need is a background. And I'm going to use a solid because I want these prints to really stand out. And a nice light bone color, that will make a nice contrast. All these prints will look really good up against it. The first thing we're going to do is pop this open and see which of these jelly roll strips we want to use. I know I'm going to use all the colorful ones, but I'm probably not going to use some of these light ones because they may not provide enough contrast. So we have 5 extras. So I think I'll just take the 5 lightest ones out, set those aside for another project, and then we will use all of these guys. The quilt is made up of 2 blocks, and I've separated my strips here. We've got 21 up here and 14 here. And these 14 are going to get subcut to make some of the blocks with. I'm going to line all my strips up so I can do the subcutting. And this is not my pattern, so I can't give you all the sizes, but Cozy Quilt Designs patterns, they're always so easy to follow, and they will tell you exactly the sizes that you need. Now that we've got all of these cut, we have some options here. We need to get a line across the back of all of these. So you can mark them. You can use a pencil or a chalk pencil and draw on the back like this. But they are eventually all going to get ironed in half. So I find that it's a lot easier just to take them right over to the ironing board, fold them in half, and iron them in half. And the ironing in and of itself gives us a nice line there, and then we don't have to draw all those pencil lines. So once you have all of those ironed in half, the next step is to take the rest of the strips, and each one is just going to get cut in half right along the fold here. Once you have all of these cut in half, we're going to go ahead and cut up our background and our accent. All we need from the background is some strips and some squares, and I do like to use a hand weight here on the far end of my ruler because it holds everything down and it helps me make a nice accurate cut. These strips get split as well. I've got all the accent pieces cut here, and these are going to get marked on the back, or if you prefer to iron them right now. That's what I'm going to do. I think it's a lot quicker to just fold them in half and iron them all. We now have everything cut for both of the blocks. So that is for one block, and all of these pieces are for the second block. Let's go ahead and get started with this one. To make this block, we are going to use 2 of these corners and 1 accent. So this is what the block's going to look like. It's going to have an accent here, and it's going to have a colorful one here and a colorful one there. And I'm going to put them on in order. I'm going to do this one, this one, this one. So let's just move these out of the way for a moment. So this one, we want to stitch along that iron line there. And so I'm going to turn this around here, and I'm going to line everything up with the corner. So I'm lining this piece up with this piece. It's a little bit tricky because we've got the pinked edge here, but you know what? You can just ignore that. So it may hang off of the edge a little teeny bit. That's okay. Now stitch right along your ironing line, or if you drew the line, you can stitch right there. And this is going to get folded right back over on itself. So you can tell if you did it correctly if your corners meet there, and they do. So go ahead and get your scissors then and trim off, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now repeat the same procedure with the accent square. Open it up, line it up in the corner, and stitch along your line or your ironed line. And again, this one is going to fold right over, and because we've already ironed it, they lay pretty flat. It's pretty easy to get them to lay exactly where you want them to go. Trim off that part, and then one more in the corner here. So that whole block is done, and I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of them stitched up. Once they're done, even though we already ironed all of these in half, all of these squares, you still want to give it a nice steam press right now. So dry first, then the steam. Our first blocks are all done. Now we're going to work on the second block. These will be made using strip units. So the first strip unit we're going to make is going to have one colorful strip and one background strip, and I'm going to put them together and just stitch right here. Now you'll notice something. Every time you get a pre-cut that has pinked edges, they may vary a little in width. This one from Andover, it's a little bit wider than my 2.5 inch strip, and that's okay. I'm going to use my seam allowance 1/4 inch from this cut edge here. The cut edge of mine actually meets up with the smallest part of the pinked edges. So don't worry about it. They're just going to be sticking off there. Just sew a nice 1/4 inch from that cut edge. We are going to want to finger press the seam allowance toward the dark fabric. It's a little bit easier for me when I have it facing this way. So I'm going to open it up, then draw your fingernail or the pad of your finger right down that seam. I'm just finger pressing it. I'm just smashing it down a little bit as I open it up. This makes it really easy to iron the strip unit later. Next strip unit is going to have two colorful ones. So let's take this one and let's take this one. They're a little bit different. And we're going to stitch down the edge here. Now remember, it's the inner side, the inner point of the pinked edges. That's where you measure your 1/4 inch from. We're also going to finger press this to one side. It doesn't really matter. They're both dark. Just press it to one side. And we're going to make these strip units with all the rest of our pieces. So half have a background and half have two colors. Even though they're finger pressed, we still do want to iron them. So I'm going to press along here and make sure I can feel the seam allowance going the way I want it to go. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of dry and then a little steam. And then I'm going to take my yardstick. Now, I know it's not a yardstick, it's 4 feet long, but we used to use yardsticks, and I cannot get away from calling it a yardstick. So you can get these at Home Depot, you can get them at Lowe's. They're very useful. So what I'm going to do is put this along that nice straight edge and make sure I don't have it bowed. It is possible to get this bowed as you sew or as you iron. So make sure you've got it nice and straight, and then one more steam. Now we're ready to subcut the strip units. When I am going to do subcutting, and all of the cuts are the same size for all of these different units, here's a way you can save a lot of time. Put your first one down on one of your cutting lines. Then take your next piece. Don't put it right on top because your seam allowances will make it very thick right there. Move it up 1 inch. Now the seam allowances are not lined up and it's going to be nice and flat. So I might take 3 or 4 of these, and then I can cut them all at the same time. You're definitely going to want to use your hand weight here, because even though this is not a real long cut, it's a little bit thick. So I'm going to put the weight there, hold here, and I can get these all cut at the same time. Now we're just going to make some little 4 patches. So each one is going to have a background and then 2 colors. And if you switch these around, you can make sure that your seam allowances will nest here. And that makes it real easy to match that intersection. So I'm going to line that up and stitch right down here. We're going to finger press away from that background. And that's our second block. Now we're going to take 2 of these blocks and 2 of these blocks and head back to the sewing machine. Here is how the block gets laid out. We're going to point those backgrounds towards the middle, and we're going to point these backgrounds towards the middle, and we're going to stitch this together. And don't worry too much about what is next to what. It doesn't really matter. The accents are always going to end up here, and the block's going to look nice and scrappy. The whole quilt's going to look nice and scrappy. So I'm just going to put these right sides together. I'm going to sew down here and sew down here. Alternate the directions you're pressing your seam allowances. We're going to go this one to the right and this one to the left. And then when we stitch these together, those will be nesting there and it'll be easy to match. Now that the squares are all done, we can start laying out the quilt. And each square still looks okay, but it doesn't look great. It's when we start laying them out that they're really going to look good. So all we're going to do is alternate the direction of this white line in the middle. So we'll do 6 across here. Now the next row just goes the opposite way. Now when we start doing more rows, now we're starting to see a pattern emerge. And that's what I love about this. A very simple block, but when you make repeated ones and you twist them and turn them, we're going to get more and more of a pattern showing here. So I'm going to lay all of this out, and I may have to trade a few pieces around if I get 2 that are too close, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. There's the whole quilt laid out. Now is a really good time to check and see if you've got everything facing the right way. So I can see these long white lines and something is wrong here. This guy is turned. There. It's very easy to fix those things now, but it's very difficult if you wait till the quilt is all the way done. I have the Pirouette quilt loaded onto the machine. The borders are on. And now we need to pick a thread color. Lots of greens would look good on here. We've got this really light color background, so if we use a dark color like this, it's going to show a lot in those light areas. And that's fine if you want your quilting thread to show a medium green. It's going to show less, but it's still going to show quite a bit. Now this oatmeal is hardly going to show in the light. It's also not going to show much in the dark. And I think for this pattern, I think it will be better if I have the thread recede and not show much. So I'm going to go with this light one. I'm going to use a pattern for quilting called Wild Roses. I like it because it's a little abstract, but you can definitely see the flowers and the leaves. There's some little curly cues, and it's a nice overall pattern, and I think it will look really good on the Pirouette quilt. Now that the whole quilt is done, you can really see those pirouette things. So the name is referring to the spinning things right here because they look like they could spin around. And I love how the accent makes those diagonal lines, and the dark one here looks really good. The quilting pattern, because it's overall, it doesn't fight with anything, but you can see the flowers and the little curly cues. I used an almost solid on the back side, so you can really see the quilting here. Again, I like that nice tight quilting. It was really fun to make, and it looks good with all the different shades of green. It's kind of a one-tone quilt, and it's turned out really pretty. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the Pirouette quilt. We hope you enjoyed it. Now, we're going to have another giveaway. We're going to give away this nice, bright, cheerful roundabout quilt. So you see the little circles and stars? It's a really fun pattern to make. You may have seen our video showing you exactly how to do it, but you could win this one. So it's very easy to enter. Just click the link below that says giveaway and put in your email address and your name. And remember, we can ship this anywhere in the world. Good luck. Now, if you don't want to miss any of our videos, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Happy quilting!